I joined the famous Horace Silver Quintet back in 1967, and I remained his bassist for over 2 years, playing alongside trumpeter Charles Tolliver first, and then Randy Brecker joined the band, and with Benny Maupin on saxophone and flute, and Billy Cobham on drums. We stayed together, I guess we stayed together over 2 years. The late 60s, though, was an epic time for me in jazz, and I was blessed to have been in the company of so many historical jazz artists like Horace Silver, and coming up and listening to, being influenced by Art Blakey and Max Roach and John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, all of these guys. I mean, I had a chance to be in the company of and spend some time with and maybe pick their brain a little bit. But with Horace Silver, this is my first professional gig. I mean, it was as a young, aspiring young bassist. Horace was a mentor and a teacher for me. First, he taught me the importance of developing good intonation, the importance of playing choice notes, striving for quality as opposed to quantity, which, as a young player, was not what I really wanted to develop. Watching other bass players dazzle their audiences with a barrage of notes, running up and down the bass, I was so jealous and envious. But although they received huge applause for their technical acrobatics, they left their audiences with nothing memorable other than being remembered for playing a lot of notes. But with Horace, I had to play in tune with him, because most of the songs that he wrote, he had, it was more like ostinato bass, which was, I had to play the bass lines along with his left hand on the piano. And so he was always checking me for good intonation, and he would look at me if I was slightly out of tune, and he would give me that look of, or sometimes he would just come out and say, hey, watch your intonation. So that was really, really helpful, and to me. Also, Ron Carter was my bass teacher at that time. I was studying with Ron. I studied with Ron for 2.5 years as well. And Ron was really, really helpful. I mean, Ron, also a mentor and teacher. Ron helped me a great deal with the ability to play in tune. And by that, how he did that was he never allowed me to use my fingers to pluck or use pizzicato. He insisted on me using the bow, which is known as arco bass, which meant that I had to study classical bass methods with him. No jazz was allowed in Ron's class. When I auditioned for the bass chair with Horace Silver, the song that I had to play was a song called Senior Blues, which is on my new CD, which is up and coming and will be out around October. It was a difficult bass line for me to play at that time. But I got through it, partly because I had heard the song before, and it was a great big jazz hit back in the late 50s. I didn't get the job at first, as there were several great bass players there auditioning as well, who were older and more experienced than I was. After the audition, Horace said to me that he liked the way I played, and he thanked me for coming. But his choice was a good friend of mine. His name was Reggie Johnson. And I was disappointed, of course. But I understood his choice, and Reggie was popular and much more experienced. So I decided to go home and practice, and hopefully there would be another opportunity in the very near future for me to get another gig. But later on that evening, after I went home, kind of disappointed with my head down, I went on home and I said, okay, I'll just go home and I'll just practice, and an opportunity will come again. That evening, to my surprise, I received a phone call from Horace saying Reggie, due to a previous commitment with Max Roach, wouldn't be able to leave town with the band right away, as Horace's first engagement started within 2 weeks of the auditions. So I was asked by Horace to join the band, which I can't tell you how thrilled I was. Had it not been for Horace, I wouldn't be here at Warwick today, and I'll say why. I was playing an upright bass. Back then, the upright basses, we considered ourselves to be an elite group. We played jazz, and we were classically trained, and we considered ourselves an elite group, and we wouldn't lower ourselves to play the electric bass. But that was the feeling that a lot of the guys had back then, partly because we couldn't play the electric bass. Horace came to me one day during my tenure with him. He came to me and he said, you know, I want you to start playing the electric bass with me because I'm going to get an electric piano. And I want to start doing some electric piano work. And I want you to get an electric bass. And I said, Horace, I'm not going to play the electric bass. I said, I don't want to play the electric bass. Horace said, no? Well, all right, well, if not, I'm going to call and get an electric bass player to come and join the band. I said, wait a minute. No, this is my gig now. Hold it. Let me rethink this. So I told Horace, yeah, let me try it out, and I'll try to play the electric bass and see what happens. Well, he took me to Chicago. The band, we had a gig in Chicago. And at that time, the NAMM show, which is the National Association of Music Manufacturers, which is currently held in Anaheim Convention Center, at that time it was held in Chicago at the Conrad Hilton Hotel in the ballroom, which was quite a stretch from how huge it's become today. I mean, it's the convention center in Anaheim is humongous. Anyway, he took me there to the NAMM show, and he got endorsements for all the guys in the band. And he got me a bass endorsement with a company called National. And my first electric bass was a National electric bass, and then they even fixed me up with an amplifier as well. I came back to New York and went home and plugged it up and started playing it. And all of a sudden it was like, wow. This isn't so bad. Matter of fact, I kind of liked it. I enjoyed it. And I started playing it some more and practicing with it, and then got to the point where I couldn't put it down. It was like I fell in love with it. And it was that, with me playing the electric bass, and it was because of that, when I played with Horace on a gig, and Bob Cranshaw, the great bassist, who was like the busiest, well, about the second busiest bass player in New York behind Richard Davis in the studio work, Bob came out and heard me with Horace in Brooklyn at a club, and saw me going back and forth from upright bass to electric bass, back and forth and reading. And he approached me on the break. He says, hey, John, you know, I like the way you play the electric bass, and I've got a heavy workload of studio work, and I'd like to know if you'd like to do some sub work for me and just, you know, cover me on some of these things that I can't make. And I said, sure. That was the beginning for me of, which really catapulted my career, with me adding the electric bass to my repertoire. I was able to get not only a lot of studio work. I started doing Sesame Street with Bob. I got the Tonight Show on the electric bass. Later on, the Arsenio Hall show. I started playing gigs with Dizzy. I got a chance to play with all of these different people. I recorded with Count Basie. I recorded with Louis Armstrong. All of these things I did on the electric bass. The engineers, for some reason, liked the way the electric bass recorded. And later on, I went right on to the Tonight Show, and the rest of it is history. And then I was approached by Warwick back in 1990 from my playing the electric bass on the Arsenio Hall show, and they came. So it was all because of Horace getting me to play the electric bass. It just changed my life, and I'm so grateful to him. And so this record is a thank you to Horace for all the things that he just taught me, and I'm just so grateful to him. I learned a lot. One of the things I learned from Horace was, and from Ron Carter, was, you know, man, you can do a lot with one note, which a lot of times, you know, when you're starting out, you want to play for the girls. You know, you want to play and you want to attract the girls. So at the end of the gig, you can go home and take a girl with you on your arm. And so if you're playing a lot of stuff and you're impressive, the girls will be attracted to you. And he had a tune that he's played that he called Que Pasa, and it was 2 notes. The whole song was just these 2 notes. Da 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 da. That was the whole song. Now, I really was not going to be too impressive as a bass player playing one note, playing these 2 notes all night long. We had a quintet, so the trumpet would play a solo for about 5-10 minutes. Then Benny would play a solo for about 5 or 10 minutes. Then Horace would take a solo for about 5 or 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then Billy would want to take a solo, and Billy would want me to always play the bass underneath him, and he would take his solo with the bass. So you're figuring maybe about 20 minutes to 25 minutes, I'm doing this. And I didn't look too good doing it because I was disgusted, because I wasn't impressive, and I just couldn't attract anybody, and I couldn't get any attention, and it was like, it was a labor. And it was just a drag, and the audience could feel it, that it was a drag. One night, I had a couple of drinks, and I just knew that Horace was going to call this song, because he would always call this song on the second set. And I knew he was going to call this song, and I just said, you know what, this doesn't work. I can't do this with this attitude. I've got to find a way to have some fun. Since I'm locked into these 2 notes, I've got to try to do something with this. So he calls a tune, and I start playing. But instead of my dissatisfaction with only having to play 2 notes, I said, let me see what I can do with these 2 notes. Maybe I can groove a little bit more with them. Thinking of drum beats in my head. And so I just started getting into a groove, and I said, maybe if I change them up, I can make the first note shorter and the last 2 notes longer. Or I can reverse it and make the first note long, and the second 2 short. Maybe I can make one of them short and one long. So I started coming up with all these different ways to play these 2 notes. And I just started putting my whole heart and soul into it. And I said, I'm just going to play these 2 notes, and I'm going to make them sound like the most beautiful notes in the world. And I just started playing them with a lot of love, and just really meaning, and just really concentrating on getting a groove and making them just really swing. Well, to my surprise, at the end of the song, everybody felt great. We got a lot of applause. The people loved it. The guys in the band got more applause. Their solos seemed to take on another life, on a new life. Horace was smiling because he felt great, because everybody's solos were great. The song took on a whole nother life of its own. Why? Because of the fact that I just wanted these 2 notes to work. And I played them with more love. And all the guys came over, and they was just saying how great it sounded and how great the band sounded. And I realized that the bass is the foundation of all bands, of any musical group, any popular or jazz group. If the bass is on, then the band is on. If the bass is really solid and beautiful, and with big notes and good tone and in tune, then the band is going to sound good. And now I understood what Doc Sepperson used to tell me years ago. He said the bass, any band is as good as the bass upon which it rests. The bass player is great, then the band is great. And that's carried me through my career, and I understand what Ron Carter told me when he said, man, there's a lot you can do with one note.